Hey YouTube, Untamed here. So you guys know I absolutely love Land Cruisers. They have a special place in my heart, and there's an old saying: if you buy a Land Cruiser, that's the last vehicle you'll ever want to own, right? And I say you ever want to own because, well, they're just so sturdy. It really is like driving around in a bank vault, and they're just a phenomenal vehicle, right? Nothing gives you quite the same level of peace of mind. But in this video, I'm going to talk through why the prices of Land Cruisers are about to drop significantly. I hinted at it in my last video for one aspect, right? Just because the used vehicle market in general is crashing. But there's more to it, and I think it's important for a lot of people to know this, especially if you're shopping around for a Land Cruiser. If you've owned a Land Cruiser, a lot of the points I'm about ready to talk through, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you understand, and you can empathize with me a little bit. So you guys know I have owned 3 Land Cruisers. Each of them were Heritage Edition. So I had a 2020 Midnight Black Metallic Land Cruiser Heritage Edition. That was my first one that got me into it, got me hooked. Then I ended up buying a Magnetic Gray Metallic 2021 Land Cruiser Heritage Edition, and like a real dummy, I sold that one and I regretted it, and I ended up buying another one, as ugly as it is to say, the same exact color too. The things I'm going to bring up here, the first point here is perhaps the most important. When you buy a Land Cruiser, there's so many people that really love it. You know, they love the Land Cruiser, they want one for sure, but the amount of people who love it is very, very different from the amount of people who actually put their money where their mouth is and actually buy it. Because I mean, they are really expensive, right? I mean, their MSRP on my Land Cruiser was $89,000 and some change, if I recall correctly, right around there. And that's a lot. That's a big pill to swallow. So that initial price tag really drove very, very low sale numbers throughout the years. We're talking anywhere from $3,000 to $4,500 every single year. And it fluctuated even below that at some points throughout the last 15, 20 years in the US. So also a factor to consider is in the US, we only got the top trim, meaning we didn't get any other engine variations. We got that 5.7 liter V8 with the full spec'd out interior, if you will. So we got the top level trim driving that price tag even higher. So that the whole price, the initial starting price point of a non-Heritage Edition, I believe it was around $86,000. So you only got that one or the Heritage Edition toward the end here for the 200 series, and that was out of most people's reach. And I say most people because even the people who could afford that, 9 times out of 10, they would prefer to get a Porsche, right? Get a Cayenne or even just a well-up Yukon XL with all the bells and whistles, and to get all the creature comforts, right? The same creature comforts that you do not get, unfortunately, in the Land Cruiser by comparison. So for the average American, unfortunately, when you sit in a brand new Cadillac Escalade or even the Yukon XL Denali, people will always, 9 times out of 10, lean toward the GMC just because it's more modern, right? It's more updated, and you kind of see where your money's going. Unfortunately, that's not the case. That hadn't been the case for the longest time with the 200 series because it was pretty dated, right? It kind of got long in the tooth, much like most Toyotas. But for Toyota enthusiasts, you really appreciate that. You appreciate the simplicity of it. You don't need all the modern bells and whistles to really love it. But my original point here is, come time to sell, if you ever try to sell a Land Cruiser, you're in for a wait. And I can tell you this from experience. Having sold 3 of them, it takes a very, very, very particular buyer. You're not going to have a bunch of people flooding your inbox trying to buy the thing, because very few people understand truly what it is and the true value of a Land Cruiser. So the amount of people who love it is huge, but the amount of people who can actually afford it or who actually put their money where their mouth is very, very small. So that has always been an issue for the Land Cruiser, unfortunately, okay? The used vehicle market, I'm not going to beat that to death, but we all know that the used vehicle market is crashing for sure, right? With the Fed forcing higher interest rates, that is a big piece of the equation for the used vehicle market. Just trade-in values across the board are just collapsing, unfortunately. So I would argue just between now and April, May, June timeframe, we're going to see a probably $10,000 to $15,000 drop for Land Cruiser prices across the board. Not to mention, supply is starting to meet the demand a little bit better when it comes to new vehicles, right? So because of that, a lot more new vehicles are hitting the lots, and they're remaining available for much longer, given the bit of the recession that we're leaning into a little bit at this point. So with the additional new supply matching the demand a little bit better, again, that doesn't help. That doesn't bode well for the Land Cruisers out there, the used Land Cruisers out there. And I say that because although we do not have a Land Cruiser option, we don't get the LC300 much like other countries do, although we might in the future. That's kind of rumored a little bit, right? But as of right now, nothing confirmed, but there's a chance we could. But we do have the LX600, right? The Lexus LX600. Unfortunately, it no longer has that glorious 5.7 liter V8 that the LX570 had before, along with the 200 series, the last Land Cruiser that we received, right? But we get the LX600, and when it comes to the price tag for the current used values of Land Cruisers and Heritage Editions with low miles, they're kind of on par. They're nearing that LX600 price tag, and a lot of people would rather spend, if they're going to spend that kind of money, might as well get the brand new Lexus, who also has that very reputable nameplate, right? The LX has always kind of been on par because it essentially is the same exact thing as the Land Cruiser, as that was the case for the LX570 and the 200 series, sharing 90% of all the same components. But of course, it being a Lexus has additional bells and whistles and extra frills, right? That a lot of Toyota people don't necessarily love. So they would lean toward the Toyota oftentimes. But when we're talking current values, I think a lot of people would probably just prefer getting the brand new one and getting the LX between the two of them. So the LX600, and I'll even say the Sequoia Tier D Pro, right? So I mean, that's coming in right around the high 70,000 point, nearing $80,000 for a brand new Sequoia Tier D Pro. So with options like the LX600 and that Sequoia Tier D Pro, again, that is kind of working against the Land Cruiser market right now, with those options now on the table and becoming a little bit more available, right? And the final point I will make here is perhaps the most obvious one, right? And that is the oil crisis, right? I mean, and I say crisis loosely, right? But especially as we start leaning into 2022, I don't know if you guys have been following much, but yeah, oil is just becoming much more scarce, unfortunately, for the availability for the US. And that is going to certainly play a role in the values of all vehicles, especially the thirsty Exhibit A, the thirsty V8s out there, and of course, including the Land Cruiser there. So the oil crisis is certainly going to play a role in the decrease in values for the Land Cruiser. And not to mention, I mean, a lot of people, you know, if you could buy both a 4Runner and a Tundra and only spend barely more than what you would have spent on a Land Cruiser, a lot of people probably would end up doing that, right? You can get both of these vehicles here for just a little bit more than one vehicle, one Land Cruiser. Sure, one is a little bit more legendary, but still, that price tag is certainly steep. So I wanted to walk through those points with you guys and really just see what you thought. Yeah, I think if you're trying to buy one right now, I would definitely wait until April, May, June timeframe. Let me know what your thoughts are. Appreciate you watching as always. Till next time.